Hey guys, my name is the Hooper Saiyan, and welcome to the first ever episode of my podcast, The Life of a Hooper Saiyan. So basically, because this is the first episode, I'm going to explain how things are going to work. So, there's going to be one basketball and one anime podcast a week. And that's pretty much it. I'm going to try to be uploading pretty consistently from NBA podcast being on Fridays and anime podcast trying to be on Tuesdays. That's my goal. We'll see how it goes. And speaking of seeing how it goes, follow me on my Instagram and my Twitter at the Hooper Saiyan so you can get updates just in case any of that changes. So, because today is the NBA podcast, I'm going to explain how the NBA podcast is going to work. So, essentially, I'm going to be starting off every podcast with 4 different categories. And these categories are the player of the week, the performance of the week, the team of the week, and the open your eyes player of the week. So, let's just get right into it. So, before I start, I just want to say that my picks for player of the week, performance of the week, team of the week were all picked on Saturday, 7/24/2020. So, July 24th. So, if you see any other performances or players that just went crazy that I didn't see, that's because I picked them on the days before it happened. So, let's just get right into it. And at this time, every team had only played one game. So the player of the week and the performance of the week is going to go to one player, and that player is Seth Curry, who had 23 points, went 8 of 8 from the floor, and 6 of 6 from 3. Now, Seth has proven that he's been a very, very consistent three-point shooter throughout the course of the season, even before the virus hit and shut down the league. So it's very good to see him get back on the court again and just ball out like that, shooting 100% from everything. All right, so the team of the week is actually going to go to the 76ers, who defeated the Grizzlies in their first scrimmage game 90-83. Now, that doesn't sound like too much of a blowout. I mean, it's only 7 points. But what was really impressive was that they forced 12 turnovers in the first half, and they did an amazing job adjusting their lineup to utilize Ben Simmons more by putting him at the power forward. That gave them more flexibility. They became a better defensive team, and they became a better offensive team because the floor wasn't as clogged anymore because Ben Simmons was down low. So, last but not least, the open your eyes player of the podcast is Boban Marjanovic, who had, in his first scrimmage, 17 points and 13 rebounds. Now, his last game before the virus, in 31 minutes, he posted a career-high 31 points, had 17 rebounds, with 9 of those being offensive rebounds. I really do believe that if his conditioning can stay up top and up notch, then he could be a huge piece for the Mavs. I mean, defensively, he's a 7'4" guy with a 7'10" wingspan. He could be a huge shot blocker if he just gets that conditioning up. Then that means he can play more minutes. He can still play 31 minutes a game. And I think he can really help the Mavericks make a huge playoff push. So, otherwise, let's just get right into it. As you could probably tell from the title of the podcast, I'm going to be doing my predictions and my personal opinions on who should win the 2019-2020 NBA awards. So I'm just going to go ahead and get right into it with Coach of the Year. I think that goes to Nick Nurse of the Toronto Raptors, who had arguably the best defense in the league, as the Raptors were top 5 in 6 defensive categories, and first in 2 of them, being opponent three-point percentage and field goals allowed. They were second in the East with their record, and they adjusted very well after losing Kawhi Leonard with a great use of Pascal Siakam as kind of like a point forward. He played the power forward position, but Nick Nurse did a great job utilizing him at the point guard position. So that is why I think Nick Nurse will get Coach of the Year. Now, I'm going to hop right into the next award, which is Most Improved Player. And before I start this one, I want to give some of my criteria about what I am looking for, not just the Most Improved Player award, but for all the awards I have. And there are 2 main stats that I will be looking at, and that is the PER and win shares. PER is the player efficiency rating. If you do not know, it is a number that sums up all the player's positive accomplishments, subtracts the negative accomplishments, and returns a per minute rating of a player's performance throughout the whole season. Now, I know that sounds extremely confusing, but basically to give you kind of like a perspective about what a average PER and what a amazing PER is, the average NBA player has about a 15 PER, And the highest PER of all time goes to Wilt Chamberlain, who in the 1963, I think it was the 1963 and 64 season, maybe the 62 and 63. Yeah, I think it was the 62-63 season. He posted a 31.82 PER, and that is the highest of all time. That statistically is the best season of all time. So, if you do want to know more about PER, MDJ on YouTube has a great video on PER, and I highly suggest you go check that out to get a better understanding of what PER is. Now, let's go to win shares, which is the second and final category advanced stat that I am looking at to determine who wins these awards. Now, the win shares is a lot more simple to understand than PER. It is a number that determines how much a player helps their team win. The higher the number, the better, obviously. And to give you perspective on that, and the all-time leader of win shares in one season is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had 25.37 win shares in the 1971 and 72 season. And also, I'd say about the average player has about anywhere between a 4 to 7 win shares per season. Now, if you want to know more about win shares, Mixtape Videos on YouTube has a great video about win shares that really helped me understood what win shares are. So let's just hop right into who I think should be the most improved player. Now, I'm going to give 2 honorable mentions for this award, and one of them being Brandon Ingram of the New Orleans Pelicans. In 2018 and 19, he averaged 18 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, half a steal, 67% from the free throw line, and 33% beyond the arc. He had a 13.48 PER, which is below average, and he only had 2 win shares, which isn't a lot at all. But he certainly stepped it up. Well, the next season being this current season, whenever he got traded to the Pelicans, averaging a career-high 24.3 points per game, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, a steal, definitely bumped up the free throw percentage to 85.8 and shot 38.7% from 3. And not only that, his PER went up to a 19.25, and he posted about 5 win shares in that season. He was a first-time All-Star, and he got career highs in points, rebounds, assists, steals, PER, and win shares. So definitely a great season for Brandon Ingram with the New Orleans Pelicans. Let's go into the next honorable mention, and that being the Devontae Graham of the Charlotte Hornets, my favorite NBA team. So of course I have to put my boy in here because just listen to these stats. So in 2018-19, in 46 games played, he averaged 4.7 points, a rebound, 2.5 assists, half a steal, 76% from the free throw line, and only 28% from the 3. He had a PER of 10.32 and half a win share. Half a win share. Which is definitely way below average. But, he's a candidate for most improved, so he bumped it up. With this current season, he averaged 18 points, 3.5 rebounds, 7.5 assists, a steal, 82% from the free throw line, and 37% from 3. And his PER bumped up to 15.84, and he had 3.5 win shares, which was definitely a heck of a lot better than last year. Now you're wondering, why did he do so bad last year? Why are his stats not that good? That's because he was a G League player, and he became a legit NBA point guard and a huge bright spot for the Hornets this year. He was also a partaker in this year's three-point contest and competed in the Team USA and Team World game, or, as some people still like to call it, the rookie-sophomore game. And he had career highs in everything except 2-point field goal percentage. But, of course, he was not the winner, and my winner being Mr. Bam Adebayo from the Miami Heat. In 2018-19, 9 points, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, and under 1 block and 1 steal, averaging 0.8 and 0.9. He had, surprisingly, a 17.9 PER and 6.8 win shares, which is actually very, very solid. But, of course, he wouldn't be most improved player if he didn't bump up his averages. And with this past season averaging 16 points, 10.5 rebounds, 5 assists, a steal, and a block, with a 20.62 PER and 8.1 win shares. Man was a first-time All-Star and had career highs in the 5 main categories that you see in the stat sheet, being points, rebounds, assists, steals, and blocks, as well as having career highs in PER and win shares. Bam Adebayo went off, and the stats and the advanced stats show it, which is why I think he's deserving of Most Improved Player. Now for the next category, we got Sixth Man of the Year. And again, I'm going to give 2 honorable mentions before I state my winner. And first, we got Dennis Schroeder of the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, Dennis Schroeder is the favorite to win, but this is off my personal opinion, and this is off what I see in the stat sheet and what I saw on the floor. But I can't deny Dennis Schroeder had an amazing year, especially coming off the bench, posting 19 points, 3.7 rebounds, 4 assists, 46% from the floor, and 38% from 3. He had a 16.8 PER and 3.5 win shares, and had career highs in rebounds, 3-point percentage, and field goal percentage. So obviously a great year from Dennis Schroeder. And let's just move on to the next honorable mention, being Derrick Rose of the Detroit Pistons. Now Derrick averaged 18 points, 2.5 rebounds, 5.6 assists, almost 50% from the floor, 30% from 3, and 87% from the free throw line. But the amazing thing about Derrick Rose was that he posted a 21.1 PER on the season, but only had 2.5 win shares, which is why I couldn't give him Sixth Man of the Year. Now let's just move straight on into my winner, which is Montrezl Harrell of the Los Angeles Clippers. Now before I read all the stats and give my reasoning, I'm sure some of you guys are wondering, well, where's Lou Williams? What about Lou Williams? And there's one simple reason. Well, 2 simple reasons. First of all, the reward is Sixth Man of the Year. So you can't have 2 six-man candidates on one team. Montrezl Harrell being on the Clippers, Lou Williams being on the Clippers. So because I believe that you can't have 2 six-men on one team, I just took whoever had the better season statistically, and that was Montrezl Harrell, with him averaging 18.5 points, 7.5 rebounds, a block, and 58% from the floor, and who had a 23.1 PER and 7 win shares off the bench. He had a career high in points per game, and he had a monster season, which is why I think he's deserving of Sixth Man of the Year. Next, we're going to go into Defensive Player of the Year. And before I get into Defensive Player of the Year, I have to say, this was by far the toughest award that I had to decide. First, let me get the one that obviously had a great defensive season, but wasn't a finalist for me. And that was Rudy Gobert, who had 2 blocks, 0.8 steals, and 4 defensive win shares this past season. Now, we all know Rudy to be a defensive monster. He's a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. But 2 players had such a dominant defensive season that I could barely choose between the 2 players. So, let me get the other honorable mention out of the way, and I'll go straight into the winner. My other honorable mention is none other than Giannis Antetokounmpo of the Milwaukee Bucks, who had a block, a steal. But wait, like Hooper Saiyan, that doesn't sound like a defensive monster. It's only a block and a steal. I'm sure there's plenty of other players that had better than that. Well, hardly anybody had 4.75 defensive win shares, which actually led the league in defensive win shares, which is incredible. That's an incredible season. But I had to give it to Anthony Davis of the Los Angeles Lakers, who had 2.5 blocks. He was tied second in the league with blocks. He averaged 1.5 steals and had 4.1 defensive win shares. Now, why did I choose Anthony Davis over Giannis Antetokounmpo? One simple reason: player opinion. A couple days ago, Larry Nance Jr. posted, it was either in an interview, but it was on Twitter. Larry Nance Jr. was on Twitter and said that Anthony Davis was his Defensive Player of the Year because Anthony Davis just being on the court just busts out plays. You can't run plays with him on the court because he's just that dominant of a defensive presence. That's what Larry Nance Jr. said. So I took that into heavy consideration, on top with him being tied second in the league with blocks, having a half a steal, like 1.5 steals, and having 4.1 defensive win shares. That's the reason why I gave it to him. Now, it could have gone either way. I'm not saying that Giannis is not deserving, because 4.8 defensive win shares is incredible. But I had to give it to Anthony Davis for that player reasoning. So let's just move on into the Rookie of the Year. And I'm not even going to lie, I didn't have any honorable mentions because Ja Morant went crazy. And the reason why I didn't have any honorable mentions is because it's obviously between Zion or Ja. But Zion only played 19 games compared to John's 59. No contest in my opinion. Now, Ja Morant had 17.5 points per game, 3.5 rebounds, 7 assists, a steal. He shot 49% from the floor and 36% from 3, which I don't know about you guys, but that surprised me a ton. I had no idea Ja Morant shot 36% from 3, which is incredible. If he can become a even more consistent three-point shooter, those numbers are going to go up. Like, people are going to step up on him more, and that's going to open up more opportunities for more assists, and he's going to become an all-star. Easy. Now, Ja also had an above-average PER with 18, and he also had 3.5 win shares, which isn't that good. But, I mean, still, the way Ja played this season was incredible, and I think it's no contest. So, Ja Morant's your Rookie of the Year, in my opinion, and I think Ja Morant is going to be the Rookie of the Year, in the NBA's opinion. Now, here's the moment of truth. The MVP. And my two contenders, my two finalists, were Mr. LeBron James and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Before I mention the winner, let me just go over some of the stats real quick. So LeBron, let's start with LeBron. He averaged basically 26 points, 8 rebounds, and 10.6 assists, also putting up 1.2 steals. He led the league in assists by 1.3 assists, which is honestly incredible. I mean, we all knew that LeBron was a willing passer and a great passer, but for him just to be able to take over the assist leading like that, he averaged more assists than Trae Young, than Ricky Rubio. He averaged more assists than any other point guard because LeBron became the point guard for the Lakers. And he just did that so casually and so easily. There was a point where LeBron was putting up like 30, 10, and 15 a night. That is insane. And he also led the Lakers to the top of the Western Conference, the 1 seed. So LeBron, dominant season. Very dominant season. But over in the East, the top of the East and the top of the NBA, you got Giannis, 29.6 points, 13.7 rebounds, damn near 6 assists, a steal and a block. We already went over how much of an amazing defensive season he had in the Defensive Player of the Year. But he also had an amazing offensive season. I mean, 30 points, 14 rebounds, and 6 assists is incredible, especially for someone who gets criticized that he doesn't shoot enough three-pointers or jump shots. He's doing this by driving to the basket at will and just dunking over everybody. That is insane. That is crazy. So, who's the MVP? Well, you may have noticed that I left out two stats. Two stats that I've been going over this whole episode that I have not mentioned yet. And those two stats being PER and win shares. So, who's my winner? If we compare the PER of this player to the all-time leading PERs, Giannis Antetokounmpo had statistically the 5th greatest single season of all time with a 31.63 PER. A 31.63 PER. Giannis tied with 1990 MJ and 1963-64 Wilt Chamberlain for the 5th greatest season of all time. And that's not to discredit LeBron, who put up a 26 PER and 9.5 win shares. But Giannis with a 31.63 PER, who was 0.19 away from tying the greatest single season of all time and also having 10.5 win shares, that's my MVP. That should be everybody's MVP. Giannis had a top 5 season of all time, and I think that makes it absolutely no question and no contest who deserves the MVP. And like I said, not to discredit LeBron. LeBron had an amazing season, but he did not have a top 5 season statistically of all time. So, with that being said, you guys know my rewards now. Thank you guys for listening to my first podcast. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter at the Hooper Saiyan for updates on whenever the anime podcast is coming out this week. And stay cool.